Code. Share. Yeah. Okay, so I hope you see my screen again. And soon you will see the slides, and the recording has started. So can you, for the last time, confirm that you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes, right. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Hi. Uh, how's life? Yeah. Labs? Any issues? At least I don't see much activity in the in Discord. So everything is clear, more or less. Are you on lab 2 or 3? Just finished 2. Okay, good. We will start checking checking them very soon. Yes. What did we talk about last time? Random indexing. We stopped at introducing random indexing. And why do we need random indexing again? What is it alternative to what? Exactly. Yes. Embeddings. So it's an alternative way of creating embeddings, and but this topic opens up to a very interesting discussion in the general context of artificial intelligence. Uh, to learn or not to learn, or what to learn, rather to say. So, because random indexing is a compositional method for coming up with embeddings, and I brought some slides from the previous class and put it in the context of what I will be talking about today. But the main question is, so we have uh, artificial neural networks, like very powerful learning framework. Yes, it can learn semantics and such, but there are alternatives to that. And then again, so it opens up an interesting question to if everything has to be learned or can be learned in general, or you can use this kind of compositional approach for um, uh, to increase capabilities of AI systems. So today's class, it's about, sorry, a specific topic or branch of machine learning and artificial intelligence, which is directly related to my research that I'm conducting here. And we will be talking about creating compositional representations. And on which mathematical ground can we do that? Why does it make sense to create such compositional representations, and how does it fit the overall picture of even artificial general intelligence? So amongst other like highlights, so we'll be talking about well, neural networks versus artificial neural networks, and especially in the context of hardware later on. So we will see how, for example, this kind of compositionality or this framework for representing data and learning can fit modern hardware approaches dedicated to AI tasks. But the overall goal is to introduce you to this framework, which is not a mainstream framework, but it's a kind of known by many. And I hope you will be with this knowledge, you will be equipped with very handy tools which will help you in your practical tasks. So, and why am I doing that? Well, the reasons are many. First, I mean, for you to know what, for example, what area of machine learning AI I'm working in, personally working in, so on my research side of job. But secondly, I'm very passionate about this research topic, and I'm playing an active role in international research community that joins efforts from researchers doing neuroscience, different kinds of neuroscience, machine learning, cognitive computing, and some others. In addition to this, again, I think it can be useful to you. I have a really great collaboration with the university in Australia, La Trobe University in Melbourne. So we have a mobility project, and four of my PhD students are sitting there working on topics related to what I will describe today. So if you are interested doing topic and doing mobilities, so within this and next year, so you are more than welcome to contact me. So so this project, mobility project, assumes exchange even of master students between our groups. So yes. And as you will see, I mean, while being a kind of maybe not a mainstream branch, so this technique that we are working on is applicable in an extremely wide range of machine learning tasks, including optimization of deep learning networks. Yes. But the starting point, so actually, I mean, he's a Finnish scientist. Well, he immigrated a long time ago to Silicon Valley. So and he actually coined this term, which is called hyperdimensional computing. So we will be talking about. So it's a computing with vectors of extremely high dimensionality, like say hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of dimensions. And the starting point was that, for this term was that processes inside biological brains involve activations and interaction between extremely large number of neurons. So the neurons are interconnected by a large number of axons, and and the hypothesis is that so the computations that brain does biologically can be modeled by choice of appropriate mathematics, working with high-dimensional representations. And what we will be talking about, we will be talking about vectors in plain mathematical term. So it's a set of coordinates. So in three-dimensional space, is like we have x, y, z coordinates, but as we increase the number of dimensions, it becomes less obvious how to visualize it. But the meaning remains same. So we have a very large representation space where so each position in the vector corresponds to a coordinate. And so in this space, we will represent different entities and relationship between them. Yes. High-dimensional vectors, actually, it's not a foreign concept in machine learning or AI in general. So you meet them in almost everywhere in within pipelines of AI. So first of all, if we take data representation, so you take any modality of physical phenomena that you sense with your sensory system. So the output of your sensory system is high-dimensional representation. So take an image. So take MNIST black and white. So you have 784 pixels, and through intensities of each of these pixels, we somehow make sense of this tiny image that there is a number in it. And obviously, but then the question is what to do with these representations. But nevertheless, so that's our input space. And in this 784 dimensional space, we can, yeah, as you can imagine, we can represent quite many instances. Then learning. So you input these images into, say, a neural network pipeline, and then so we will start looking at some selected class of neural networks next time. But so I guess you are familiar with the concept of perceptron or multi-layer perceptron or convolutional neural network of different kinds. So, and you should know that if you take activations at a certain level, so that's already can be regarded as a representation of the initial data, so transformed into a different part, into a representation space, probably of a different dimensionality, and also to a specific part of this representation space. So in any case, we are talking, or you should have, I mean, when you think about machine learning or AI, the best abstractions that you should have is really a representation space in which you try to navigate. So you try to draw separation lines between categories. You should imagine that this category is somehow grouped in this space. They create complex surfaces, which are called manifold. So so it's a mathematically tractable object in which you try to make an order with your algorithm somehow. And so again, coming back to our AI or machine learning pipeline, so we have an initial data. Probably some of these coordinates are correlated. When you do the learning, so you transform it to a different representation space where these coordinates are not anymore or not to the same extent correlated with each other. But at the end, you also produce, so you could, when you train the system, so hopefully you also kind of transform them such that the categories become separable. So you also, you base a decision based on, you make your decision based on similarity of these vectors in high dimensional space. So you take, for example, cosine of the angle between these vectors. That's a kind of very typical one of the objective functions to, for example, maximize the similarity intra-class and increase dissimilarity intra-class. Next concept, very essential in machine learning, distributed representations. So distributed representation here would be an opposite to what is called localist representation. Localist representation is a representation where a value on each position of your representation is significant. So changing a value would change completely the entity that you represent. An example, so ASCII code. So you take a letter, encode it in ASCII code. You take letter A, so you take a binary of it. So you swap a single bit, and then it suddenly becomes completely different letter, right? Obviously. And I mean, it's not a surprise because all of our computing technology is based on this exact representation. So we live in the world where position of one on a certain in a certain place really matters for the value that it represents. In distributed representations, it's the position, the actual values on the positions, they do not matter. So you treat the entire representation as a whole. And again, so the best illustration, or at least intuition of such representations is kind of displayed here. I mean, it's a shortcut, kind of mental shortcut, because I mean, it's a property of our brain, but our brain treats entire tokens like words as a whole. So, I mean, for us, it doesn't matter that you swap the place, the order of letters, or you use a different symbol to instead of another one. You still can get it. So this is a result of our learning. So. And neural networks, the result of learning, of training of a neural network. So you create a representation such that it is treated as a whole. So you optimize the entire representation. So these are two types of representation: a localist and a distributed. And we will be talking, when in the context of hyperdimensional computing, we will be talking about distributed representations. And then there are there are pros and cons of both. If you think about, or just imagine, so based on the facts that I listed now, that we will be working with high-dimensional vectors, and we will treat the entire pattern as a whole. So what would be a kind of possible gain of doing so? I mean, it's like immediate consequence that each position is not significant for the encoding or representation of a concept. We can allow errors. So we can flipping a single bit doesn't matter. So we somehow need to. Well, I will tell you what are the mechanisms that enable this stuff, but. Distributedness of representation is like redundant coding. So you represent it in such a way that introducing a noise, so you still can make sense of this pattern, exactly as it is illustrated here. I mean, this is an extremely noisy example from the machine processing point of view. Yeah, so that's what we will be talking about when talking about hyperdimensional computing. But then we also will touch more global AI challenges, like artificial intelligence of different capabilities. So we didn't talk much about it, but so where we are heading at, so with this stuff. So we started with some machine learning and narrow AI. So now we are entering the phase of somewhat more capable AI, but still far away from being from achieving artificial general intelligence. And this is, by the way, I mean, these categories I took from publication from Google, trying to kind of formally define what would be the capabilities or properties of artificial intelligence systems satisfying different levels of intelligence. But nevertheless, so we are a technical course, and that's why we need to kind of, I mean, as much as possible, connect to technical issues. And here we need to go again to the roots of the definition and talk about intelligent agents. I mean, so the initial formulation of AI. So what are we trying to recreate with our algorithm? So we talk about an artificial system that functions in an environment, and it possesses a set of intelligent behaviors like recognition, analysis, prediction, reaction. And for doing this, it is presumed that artificial intelligence should have internal world model. So that's a kind of high-level definition of intelligent agents. And then if you go into this domain, so that is something we talked about during this 0034 course, knowledge management, knowledge representation and management. We talk about organizing a model. About describing the world in terms of objects that possess certain properties. They expose certain relationships. So multiple objects, so they interact and can be described from the situation's point of view and such. But the point is that all boils down to implement or making a system to understand these two types of hierarchy: part, whole, and category-based classification, basically. And so you should be also able to grasp the structure of the relationship in spatial, temporal, and even the part whole contexts. Well, this is a kind of general definition of intelligent agents. Then there are some specific tasks that are kind of fall into the domain of machine learning, where all these properties make sense and have to be addressed. For example, you want to build a model that classify that analyze protein, that the one that got the Nobel Prize this year, for example. So all this needs to be learned. The question is how to achieve this. So the current trend, and rather successful trend, obviously, so no doubt for this, is the large models based on artificial neural networks. That demonstrates some properties, but practically it is still not evident. It's not proven at all how, for example, generative models actually address all the challenges of describing the world in parts and compose representations based on known parts that can be used in different contexts and etc. So the question, which is still not answered, whether everything should be actually learned, like in a coherent way, starting from sampling the environment until understanding all these complex structures. as a result of this global learning. So there are technical problems that doesn't allow to give a unique answer to this. And at this point, I want to probably stop and introduce more formally the topic of this year seminars. So you will be looking at this problem. So whether neural networks are capable of learning compositional representation. So what are the challenges that exist there? So you will, so let me just open Canvas. Go to modules and so I hope you have read about seminars this year. So let me just zoom in. Yes, this is the base article. So that we will read. It is called "On the Binding Problem in Artificial Neural Networks." And it is authored by notable people. So Jürgen Schmidhuber, one of notable scientists in the domain of artificial neural networks. And it is a kind of, well, not a kind of, it is a review article. So it introduces formally the problem of binding, and then it goes step by step of addressing different aspects of it and how neural networks successfully address it or fail to address these challenges. So for the seminar, I suggest you to read this article entirely. And then I hope that you will actually, as I told you, it covers a broad spectrum of problems. I hope some of these problems will trigger an extra interest in you, and you will select an article cited within this, an extra article cited within this one, within the main one, and review that one as well. So you need to review. So let me see if I just specified it. Mouse point. Yeah. Yes. So really, I want to model a kind of research process. So you read an introduction to the area, describing really challenges. So that's about challenges, and then you select subsequent articles interest driven, and then you prepare a presentation where you first describe the context in which you selected this topic, and then you go deeper into presentation of this selected article. If it happens to be that articles will overlap between groups, that's fine. No biggie. Obviously, the presentations supposed to be different. No questions on the logistics? Yeah.
You see, supposed to do before. Do all 4 members in the group choose together one extra article?
Yes. Yeah. So one group, 2 articles. But the thing is that I want really to trigger discussion. So it's not to take it not as a kind of formal assignment. So that's something that normally people kind of leave aside when talking about neural networks. So they jump on neural networks and so try to solve a particular technical problem. So here I found this article as a very good introduction to the challenges which are unsolved yet. So maybe it will help you selecting your future thesis topic as well. Yes.
Another question that maybe not really connected to this anymore. You said another point with the seminars teaches how research is done. And for that, you have spoken in the first article that is what kind of article that describes the topic.
Yes, I mean, and in this case, this will be the base article that describes
So,
it.
say I have to continue doing this kind of research. How would I pick another base article to?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it just describes entire.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a kind of a question that there is no unique recipe to. Here it is again. So you normally are driven by certain interests. So you have your internal motivation in discovering. Well, maybe as a starting point, you have quite a broad interest in to approach solving a specific challenge, and then you start to select the article. So here there are two approaches. So first you need, I mean, the initial phase, you need to understand the whole spectrum of work which is being done. And that normally, I mean, obviously it is called state-of-the-art research. And normally such review articles, they provide a good kind of starting point. So they cite these key notable articles that you have to review in details. But then, if you the next step towards your own production maybe is to kind of jump into the really latest publications on this topic. And for this, you normally review the proceedings of the top conferences. And so top conferences in our context, not to exclude intentionally anything, but like NeuroIP, ICLR, let me just ICML, and the journals like Transactions on Neural Networks, Learning Systems, Neural Computations, and such. Is it me? No. Mute one more. Okay. Yes. All right. I don't know if I answered your question somehow. But then you basically, I mean, at some point you start you come to understanding of keep people contributing to the topic, and you start to monitor the production from these people. So normally, Google Scholar has this opportunity to subscribe to new publications from different authors. But again, so just to conclude this topic, the key recipe is to have an environment where people suggest you. So normally, I mean, our brain is quite limited to kind of know everything. So I jumping ahead. So I will give you this link later on, connected to today's class. But I run this. This webinar series since 5 years now, and on all topics connected to hyperdimensional computing, and it's always a challenge, for example, to select publications for the next season. But here I have two other colleagues of mine, one in Australia, another one in Sweden, that I mean, we actively discuss, I mean, what is new, what is hot, and I mean, sometimes they read articles that I totally miss, but at the end, yeah. But I will come to this website later on. So. And basically, the message is you have when talking about AI or ML. So probably it's not totally strange at all to separate two different problem formulations. One is to understand how the brain, actually biological brains, actually do the job. And another job is to actually model that's what we know about functionality of the brain and still produce capable AI systems. And in this case, it is all about taking. It's okay to take assumptions or to make assumptions about certain context in which you learn, and you use tools that at least streamlines learning, and that's what this framework of hyperdimensional computing, in my opinion, is really good for. So it can, as I will show you later, so it can help really, on the one hand, create, not to learn, but really encode hierarchical structures. But on the other hand, you can interface them to learning systems, and at the end, you can create, you can come up with computationally efficient solutions to complex problems. Talking about persona, so this area was first pioneered by several people. Even Geoffrey Hinton, who received Nobel Prize this year, is one of people who, well, indirectly contributed to the area by coining this term and understanding the nature of representations produced in the neural networks, so distributedness. But then there are other people who actually was thinking about this fundamental challenge of bridging the gap between symbolic AI and AI based on the neural networks. So and asking the questions whether neural networks can learn symbolic representations and can come up with compositional representation. So, and it was nowadays, by the way, talking about again drifting away a little bit. So nowadays, publications are more of kind of informative nature. So people come up with a certain solution, they publish it, and then keep up on doing, kind of producing new results. Back in 1980s and before, so it was really, I mean, you could see traces of a scientific debate between notable people. One of such debates was between people advocating for impossibility of neural networks to learn symbolic representations, and for example, those who try to prove that it is possible by neural networks. So Paul Smolensky he is now one of key researchers at Microsoft. Is one of such people. But again, back to the actual topic. We will be talking about mathematical framework where everything will be encoded. Well, people within AI machine learning, they don't like word encoding, so rather represented as high dimensional vectors. And you will understand now very soon why they have to be high dimensional vectors. And then since this will be a vector space, so we will apply certain, we will apply algebraic operations on these vectors to do the computation. So, and this is important. So vector is not a number. So vector is a set of coordinates. So if you change this one coordinate, so you or even many coordinates, you will have kind of subtle transformation of the vector compared to values where you change or a number where changing its representation results in a can result in a totally different number. And we will operate with such vector spaces where we can easily generate vectors which are almost orthogonal to each other. So now I use explicitly the word orthogonal, so with respect to, for example, cosine. So and cosine is a similarity measure. So you can and these vectors will be used to represent symbols. And that is one of the properties of symbolic AI. So or properties of symbolic nature of biological AI. So we can generate symbols on the fly. So when we need them to name objects. So that's so natural to us. And we need a machinery that allows us to do so for in the artificial systems. So let's take a break and then we continue with an overview. 5 minutes, okay?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Go on, Jose.
Hello. I just had a question about forming the groups for the seminar. I'm sorry if I missed it, but is there like a deadline to make the
No,
groups?
well, the only deadline is about time to present the topic. So for this, there is a deadline. So let me search for it. Search for it. And I think it's if you go to modules, open course schedule. Let me see. Yes. Yeah, so it was a question regarding seminars, so about the deadlines. So the original question from Jose was about whether there is a deadline for forming groups. So no deadline for this, but there is a deadline for presenting a seminar and attending this seminars, and it is written here in the schedule. So it will be on all seminars will happen on 16th of December in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks from now.
Was it? I believe you mentioned in the first class.
Yeah, go on after again.
Some must be at the same time. Is it still planned to be that, or do we have them one after each other?
Yeah. So how it worked last time, and it actually was quite successful. So you create, or I can show you the last year canvas. Oh, see? Too many. Distributed representation doesn't look from the side. That, by the way, is one of the challenges to learn, invariant representations. You will read about it. The D7041, I want to have this instance and modules, and let's see seminars. Seminar presentations, schedule of seminars, I think it's here. Yes. So you should communicate to me. So each group communicates to me the slot in which you present in good time before the seminar date, and as well as the link where it will be presented. I will remind you, but normally like 1 week before the seminar, so you should communicate me the date. And what is it? Date and time. Yes. And here, I don't know why I did have this different groups. Yeah, because I think I also published the, well, I will probably come up with the more comprehensive table that shows the names of the presenters and the topic as well. Yes. The one. Yes, and then so you need to present. That's you get, and then you need to attend to more points, to more presentations, and then you need to kind of present the annotation of what you have presented along with your link in. Well, I will create a Canvas quiz for that. So with the free form fields. So and then so I will kind of go through your answers and grade them. But the grading is quite discreet. So I mean, obviously you don't need to write an essay; it's just bullet points of what you're listening to show that you attended. Again, the idea with seminars is that I mean, the presenters, so they read and kind of enhance their knowledge in a certain field, and having one base articles assures that you all have at least same understanding of the base problem. And those who attend, so they need to be attentive when they attend, so to have their notes. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. And this presentation may appear as a kind of high level, so I kind of touch on different topics, but again, since this is not a mainstream, I try to make links to what you probably already know, and also saying that the actual mathematics or algebra of this representation is rather straightforward. So I want you to give feeling what you can do with it. And moreover, so you will experiment with these representations in lab 3. So then you will gain some more insight. But what is hyperdimensional computing from the standpoints of what we have learned so far? I have proper references, but it's rather mathematical article. So there is a set of theorems that shows that in high-dimensional spaces, when again we are talking about hundreds or thousands dimensions, one can linearly separate any point or any vector. So let's talk about a tip of a point, a tip of a vector, so which is a point in this high-dimensional space. So with a high probability, you can build a linear separator of either a single point from all the rest, or from any group of points from all the rest of points. So in a limit. So again, the dimensionality is not specified. So the higher dimensionality is, the higher is the probability to build such a separator. So that's a sound principle. So saying that if you find such a transformation into high-dimensional space, so then you can build simpler classifiers, simpler compared to artificial neural networks that I try to build this kind of nonlinear border. One of the practical applications, and again, so if you're interested in the link, I can give it to you. Is a error correcting system suggested by this by the authors of these theorems. So basically, it is about classifying wrongly classified samples by neural networks. And what they did, so they looked at the cases where neural networks produced wrong results, errors, and recorded the activations of all neurons on all the layers of a neural network, and treated it as a single high-dimensional vector. And then they, so based on these properties, so they were able to build additional classifiers that kind of address these border cases. So when the main neural network reported an error, so then they passed it through this additional set of classifiers and was able to improve the performance. So this is one, yes.
Like, did they do this to find out what parameters to change in the neural network?
No, they just worked with whatever neural network gives you. So you train a network until acceptable performance, and still it produces errors. And then you try to look at the state for these errors, or the state of the neural network that's resulted in these errors, and build a classifier that forces, I mean, this extra helper system to produce correct decisions.
So if we find that the neural network always produces measure similar errors for similar to input, then we have an extra network that corrects.
Yes, you can think of it as an extra neural network with linear activations, so to say. Yes, yes. So it's an extra kind of system. Another concept that's directly related to properties of high-dimensional vector spaces, or not hyperdimensional vector spaces, but rather hyperdimensional computing, is that their operations, they lead to explicit kernel transformation. So you remember we talked about kernel trick in the context of support vector machines, with the point with an idea to try to see whether data will become more separable in high dimensional spaces. So by applying kernel on the dot product. But I also mentioned at that time, so there is a research branch on so-called explicit kernel transformations. So you can apply different transformations to your originally lower dimensional data that move your data into high dimensional space with different properties of the dot product between the samples. So one of such transformation is so-called random projection. I don't know if you have heard about it in some context. So in many cases, practical cases, for example, dealing with neural networks. So you want to align your data with the dimensionality of your input. To do this, you can apply a random projection. So you have a projection matrix with one dimensionality of which is equal to the original dimensionality of the input feature vector, and the second dimensionality is the target dimensionality, and then you do vector matrix multiplication basically. And the resulting vector is of higher dimensionality, and for example, following the random projection matrix, you method. So this method preserves the relative dot product between the entries. So it doesn't do much. But there are other types of transformations that actually implement different other kernel functions. So basically, they do modify the properties of the dot product after transformation. So and high dimensional computing part of it is responsible for this type of transformations. And okay, I need probably to speed up and go into some. And finally, so I mentioned this need before. So we are talking about creating means to encode structured data or represent structured data on the fly. So when we need it. So you have a representation of object A, you have a representation of object B. You want to represent that object B is on to the left of the object A, for example. And for that you need to introduce such concept somehow to the left or to the right. So I mean, so you need. So we are talking about some symbolic representations, and as I said, from the symbolic AI perspective, you have to be able to generate symbols on the fly, whatever you think naming. So you need to be able to created in necessary quantities. And here we come to a very interesting property of really high dimensional random spaces. So now I added randomness to it. So previously I talked about just large dimensionality. So now we not only are interested in whatever vectors, we want to draw them randomly from this representation space. And then we enter an interesting into a kind of interesting domain or a property of such spaces is that on high dimensionalities, with respect to given initial vector, so you generate it randomly, and you start to measure similarity, so cosine similarity, or whatever other similarity distance. So you start to measure to say all other available patterns in this space. So there is a set of theorems that tells that with very, very high probability, so you all of the space, almost the entire space, representation space, will be almost orthogonal to your chosen vector. And this property, now I will demonstrate it in the case of binary spaces. So I will tell you later on that, I mean, we can use any numerical system, but now think about binary vectors. So each component is 0 and 1. And the similarity measure in this case would be what is called Hamming distance, if you remember. So the number of ones that coincide on corresponding positions. Oh, that's not a... Do you have a charger for Mac? No? Is it USB-C?
No, it's
Oh, do you have a USB-C charger?
yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of opens up for possibilities. No, I think this one could work. But this is for Mac, right? Yeah. Thanks. Now I need to get appropriate outlets. Oof. That will be challenging. It's okay. I will move it here. That will be the best recording ever. So like this. Oof. Okay, so now I'm on the safe side. Yeah, all right. Hamming distance, so the number of positions with the same value. And so if you have Hamming distance 0, it means that, let me see. What does it mean? Hamming distance. I'm always confused if it's 1 minus, but so on the one end, it's a completely orthogonal representation, so that the two representations do not intersect in any position. On the other end, we have two coinciding vectors, where I mean basically, yes, Hamming distance is 0, so it's all the same vector. So and here we vary the dimensionality of these vectors, starting from 5 bits up to 10,000 bits. So this is the orange one. And what we measure, so this shows a histogram of vectors, number of vectors, which are located on the corresponding Hamming distances. And here we have normalized Hamming distance, so it is divided by the dimensionality. So what you see here is that as the dimensionality increases, so for small dimensionality, so it's more of a uniform distribution. It means that many vectors, so they are located on pretty much same distance to the chosen one. But as you increase the dimensionality, so most of the space become located around the 0.5 interval. And this 0.5 is called, I mean, when you see such a similarity or such a Hamming distance, it is called, I mean, you regard them as pseudo-orthogonal. So basically on high dimensions, the overwhelmingly high probability. So you generate two vectors at random, just zeros and ones in each position. And you will get pseudo-orthogonal vectors. So the probability of generating vectors which are even slightly on the side, like 0.4 or 0.6, is negligibly small. And that is used to actually, oops, what happened? This property is used, you cannot minimize. This property is used really to construct compositional representation. So now I will, after this slide, I will show you how it relates now to random indexing. So, for example, you want to represent a sequence that you have certain symbol followed by the other symbol by yet another symbol in a single vector. So you have originally random vectors, and you have two operations here. You have plus, and you have an operation that corresponds to encoding the position, which is achieved by permutation. This row over here is a permutation operation. The property of permutation, again, so you, I mean, all the properties of these algebraic operations, they make sense when you analyze the result of the operation with respect to the similarity measure. So if you take, in the binary case, Hamming distance, so what, and the similarity measure behaves as follows. So if you have two, or if you have a randomly generated vector of large dimensionality, you permute its coordinates according to certain permutation pattern. So then on each permutation, and you measure the Hamming distance again to the original one. So on each permutation, so you will obtain a quasi-orthogonal vector. This means that, I mean, this gives you this very nice tool to represent the same symbol, but on different positions. So A on the first position and A on the third position will be treated differently. But since they are derived from the same base vector, so you have a scheme to represent a sequence. So why is it done like this? Again, from the symbolic perspective, so the sequences ABC, BAC, and CBA, so they're all obviously different, right? But if you have a single instance of symbol A, B, and C, so it doesn't matter in which combination you add them together, so they will result in all the same kind of final output. This randomization operation allows encode the position, and this is important. So in many machine learning tasks, you need to encode positions. I will show you some instances of it. In the same way, you can represent graphs. Well, here we have tree and graph, but essentially, I mean, all data types can be converted to graphs. And the important point is that, and this dot within the circle, it corresponds to multiplication operation.
Sorry, Evgeny.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, but we cannot see the slides online.
Oh, you cannot.
No.
No. Thank you for noticing. Just a second. Why you cannot see a slide? And what about now?
We see your desktop
Yes,
with Discord.
Like this.
Now we can see that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So basically what I'm saying is that we are talking about three main operations, algebraic operations on a vector space. So here all the letters are vectors. And we define addition operation, multiplication operation, and maybe not very an operation that you normally don't see in other computation context, permutation. So you define a pattern and you just reshuffle the positions, but in a consistent manner. And all of them, they have different properties with respect to the similarity of the result and the initial vectors. So again, when you will work with them, and I will give you the sources, so you can read more details about it. But now let us go back to random indexing and see, I mean, why it made sense. So random indexing, so it came along as an alternative to Latin semantic analysis. So when you have, when you want to create embeddings of words by kind of analyzing their occurrence in big corpora of text in documents. And then you have this huge matrix of the terms versus number of documents in which they appear. And then, so you try to factorize this matrix to reduce the dimensionality, and then you can use it for example, in semantic classification tasks, like finding synonyms. So here, so instead of having the this huge matrix, we want to create vector representations of terms in different documents. So what whenever you meet a term in a document, so you encode the documents. First, you create identities of each document, so as a vector. So you randomly generate it. So we learned that you can generate as many identities as possible, and then you so you record them in a table, and then you start to parse parse this document. And when you see a term, so you add the code of the document to the embedding of this term. And why does it work? It works again. It works due to the principles due to the principles of high-dimensional space. So if you now, for example, from the above line, you remove all this randomization stuff. So essentially, so an addition operation allows to create sets, so unordered sets. So you encode sets of elements in an unordered manner. But at the end, so you will see for different terms, so they will appear with different frequencies in different documents. So statistically, so these representations, they will be drawn apart with respect to cosine similarity as a measure. So then it was noted that the document context of a document is not very, it's too broad for again, to define semantic of a word. And instead, that was the worked with in lab 2. So they decided to create representations of a term depending on the context so of words in which it appears. And for that, so this is a clear case when you need to distinguish representations of similar words on different positions. So the idea here is that you have initial calls for the terms here. So you, as I said, you generate randomly. If you measure Hamming distance, it will be 0.5 all the way through. And then you start to parse the document and you encode. So you create an encoding for a specific word, encoding the positions, using the position-based encoding of the neighbors. And positions of the neighbors are encoded using permutation. So what does it mean? So you take a vector for not, and you permute it according to certain pattern. And from the computational point of view, by the way, so permutation can be implemented as a cyclic shift. So in the simplest case, so you just cyclically shift it to the left, or, well, you need to decide in which direction you shift. And this is equivalent. So this is a special case of permutation. And already this one, it allowed the creation of embeddings which are kind of more adequate from the semantic perspective. So on TOEFL synonym test, so random indexing using this method with permutation achieved up to, well, 78%. Important point, there is no learning in here. So that's a kind of a strength. I mean, you get representations of objects, having an assumption that the representation of an object defined by the context, but then you create it based on the mathematical properties of the target vector space in which you work. So similar encodings, similar embeddings in neural networks, so they require really learning. So I mean, this context encoding exists even there, but it requires substantially larger number of iterations to produce these encodings. Next, very interesting property. You can create vectors with the desired shape of a similarity function. Again, so maybe I don't want to stop on this topic explicitly, so it can be quite broad. But what do I mean? So you can, so if you just draw randomly the components of a vector, so then, as I told you, so you create pseudo-orthogonal symbols. In many cases, you want to have a process where similarity is somewhat smoother. So it's that two vectors, for example, so you want to create vectors that are more similar to each other than to others. So that's that is important when you want to represent continuous values in a certain range. So that, for example, representation for number 2 and 3 on a line, or if you encode time positions, they're similar. They are more similar than encodings for time steps. I don't know, 25 and 26. So this is useful in different contexts. So there are ways of controlling this similarity. So one of useful applications, and this is the state-of-the-art applications. Well, it's already 4 years old, but 3 years old, but still, I don't think it is beaten. In the context of visual scene recognition, so robotic operation. So you want to represent visual scenes and find the most similar ones. And normally, so there are different ways to create embeddings. Again, embeddings of image. So neural network based, and again, so the neural networks based with different architectures. So the written there. More kind of feature engineering based descriptors like locally binary features, Bell descriptors or whatever. And the thing is that now this is a general problem formulation. You may have different descriptors of the same modality. And normally, so you work with a single one for solving a specific task. And one descriptor or one type of embeddings can be suboptimal for solving this task. But another one could be more favorable. So what does it mean? So it means that probably you need to maintain a table with different types of embedding. So you explode your memory for this embedding. So what this representation is good for. So you can, for example, say, okay, so we have these different descriptors. They probably have different dimensionalities, but what we can do, first of all, we can align the dimensionalities, for example, by random projection. So you say all our descriptors will be of this finite length. And so you align the dimensionalities, and then you say, okay, you generate these symbols for descriptor 1, descriptor 2, descriptor 3, and use this type of this is called filler role encoding. So you basically associate a symbol for descriptor 1 with the actual embedding, and so on and so forth. Oops. Yes. As a result, you have a single vector that incorporates all possible embeddings that you might think of. And you can use this aggregated descriptor to train another classifier, for example, or do a KNN-based search if you have this memory-based learning. And it basically combines the strength of all of them, and you can achieve higher results than with a single embedding. Well, in order not to rush, but maybe I can stop with the last application that I can show you. My own production. So we with my team from La Trobe, we analyzed traffic in Melbourne region. So it was really this big data case when they had Bluetooth readers installed in traffic lights, and they recorded MAC addresses of all Bluetooth devices passing by. So you have at the end they have this huge database of MAC addresses passing by different crossings, and the task was to analyze the congestion. So basically, how many what are the most congested regions? But from the machine learning perspective, so it all converges to a case where you have sequences of different length. So if you have sequences of different length, how do you input it to say a neural network of a certain architecture? Again, so there are different approaches, but using, for example, algebra, if you transform all your initial features, like this MAC addresses, into vectors of the fixed dimensionality, then you can encode the sequences in the way I showed you previously in a single vector of the fixed dimensionality, which preserves the and then you can build or you can input it into a neural network for I don't know, whatever purposes you have. So that's what you will try yourself in the context of language generation. So one approach would be to collect n-gram statistics, but you can also encode this n-gram statistics into vector form. And then you can build, again, a linear classifier by summing up all the representation in the centroid classes, in the centroid vectors, and achieve reasonable performance. We start with this use case next time, and then we continue with self-organizing maps. If you have any questions, feel free to ask anytime. All right. See you next time tomorrow.